If you're feeling overwhelmed, like you're constantly forgetting something, or like every elopement feels like starting from scratch, you don't have a time problem, you have a systems problem. Today, we're talking about why standardizing your workflow, even if it's just in your head, is the secret to saving your brain power, delivering an incredible client experience, and building a business that feels calm instead of chaotic. Let's dive in. Welcome to Stoked, the podcast that helps adventure elopement photographers hit six figures and beyond in their businesses without hustling on social media. I'm your host, Megan McPhail, a former burnt-out emergency veterinarian that quit my hard-earned career to become an elopement photographer. Now I'm living a life I absolutely love, full of travel, adventure, and financial abundance, and I am hell-bent on helping you do the same. Are you ready to start booking out your calendar with dream couples in breathtaking locations and feeling genuinely stoked about your elopement photography business, life, and bank account? Then let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, it's your host, Megan McPhail.
And your co-host, Todd Reedy.
And today we're talking about standard operating procedures. For short, we're going to call them SOPs.
So for those who haven't used the term standard operating procedure, which isn't part of like my normal vocabulary or wasn't something that I used in my previous job, it's just like your workflow, your standard way of doing things. So like the term standard operating procedure, I feel like it may be a little intimidating if you're not used to it.
Yeah.
And so really it's just like the way you run your business. Step-by-step, methodical, and repeatable.
Yeah. And if you have ever worked a different job, you probably have heard of SOPs. You've probably had like a little client handbook where they're all written out for you to follow. I know as a veterinarian, we had a lot of SOPs that we would follow. And we're going to talk about why it's important to have SOPs in your elopement photography business. And you don't need to necessarily write them down. You don't need to create your own like 20-page little handbook, but at least have them in your head. And there's several things in our business that we do the same way every time so that we don't have a ton of extra thinking and we're not reinventing the wheel. So yeah, let's talk about why standardizing the way you do things is so important.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, there's a bunch of reasons why standardizing your workflows can help you in your business. For one, it removes mental clutter. You're not wasting energy wondering what comes next, kind of building everything from scratch every time. It's just, if this, then that. It makes things a lot easier. It also reduces decision fatigue, which is something I oftentimes struggle with because, you know, if you have to make decisions all the time, we did a whole podcast on that, and it just really makes life difficult to have to like decide things constantly. It's like the joke, like, what do you want for dinner? You know, after you've made a million decisions all day, having to decide what to eat is also really challenging. So, but more importantly, it creates consistency within your business so that every couple can get the best version of your service so that you're not dropping the ball and maybe giving somebody the 5-star treatment while forgetting something for somebody else. And it's also going to protect you from burnout. So the less cognitive load you have, you know, the less anxiety you're going to have, the more peace you'll have, and the more creative you can be in your business and the more you can connect with your couples, which I think is really important in elopement photography, is maintaining your energy so that you can show up to elopements feeling creative and excited to be there and really give your couples the best day possible. So I didn't realize that I was basically creating standard operating procedures in the way that I was running my business. I just knew that doing things differently every time was not working for me. It was kind of overwhelming my brain. But then looking back, I realized like, man, I really do have a set way of doing things. And one of the examples is when Todd started traveling with me. He wasn't doing video yet, but he met me in Colorado and I had done an elopement that day. And then the next day we were driving to someplace else. I can't remember where we were going, but it might have been Moab or something like that from Colorado. And my standard way of doing things after an elopement day was, you know, I would back up all my files the night before I would go to bed and like chug a bunch of water. And then the following morning, I would do all my sneak peeks and then basically be ready to pack up and check out by 11 a.m. or 10 a.m., whenever the checkout time was. But Todd wanted to leave earlier than that. So we kind of rushed out the door and I didn't get to do my normal workflow. And I kind of had a mental breakdown about it. We had to like pull over and I had to explain to him like, and this I think relates to like my ADHD and stuff like that. But we had to like pull over because we were actually in 2 different cars because again, I had already shot this elopement and he had met me in Colorado. But we pulled over and I remember being like, I didn't get to do the things that I normally do in the morning. And now I'm freaking out because like I always do it this way and I wasn't able to do it this way. I think I didn't get the sneak peeks out, but probably would have gotten them out that afternoon or something like that. But my whole workflow for that morning had been sped up. And I wasn't okay with that because I had, after years and years of shooting elopements, I had this very specific way that I managed my mornings the day after an elopement. And now that it was all messed up, I kind of, had a mental breakdown about it. So then from there on out, we were like, okay, every morning after an elopement, we are doing things the same. We are not checking out till 10 or 11. I'm getting my sneak peeks done. I'm packing my bags a certain way. I'm putting my camera gear away a certain way. And now Todd knows that that's how I operate. That's the SOP. And we never stray from it after that one time. And that also kind of helped wake me up to realize like, man, I really do have a very strict way of how I operate to make sure that no balls get dropped. You know, if you have ADHD, you know, it's hard to remember things sometimes. So by creating these workflows within my business, I know I can rest easy knowing that I didn't forget anything.
Yeah, that was like a good wake-up call or reminder of like how we needed to like establish boundaries and like establish some kind of methodology for interacting and working together. And so even if you're not working with a partner, having like that set methodology for yourself will just make your life so much easier. And you probably already are doing it in the background, but life happens, shit hits the fan, and like you maybe get thrown off. And so like being able to revert back to that standard procedure will be super helpful.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the common workflows where you could kind of standardize things to make your life easier. So for one, and this is all the kind of stuff where like once you start getting more inquiries and bookings, as an elopement photographer, people get really overwhelmed. That's always like the big goal, right? Is like, oh, if I just get inquiries and bookings, I'm going to do great. But then this whole mess of new problems shows up. And so this is where kind of standardizing things ahead of time or as you're booking things can be really helpful and kind of remove some of that burnout that a lot of photographers feel when they do start being successful and getting bookings for elopements. So the first thing is, inquiry responses. So having a set way that you respond to inquiries and then also follow up with inquiries is super important. I like to tell my students that instead of like every day wondering if you need to follow up with an inquiry and having it kind of be a mess and all over the place, you can just have like Tuesdays and Fridays be your inquiry follow-up days, instead of having it be some strict like, oh, I got to do it within 24 hours and 3 days and 7 days. Like just start your Tuesday morning following up with people and then again on Fridays instead of having it be on your to-do list forever and having maybe like a spreadsheet or a piece of paper or something like that where you keep track of that stuff. Because some people, they have 20 inquiries a month or something, and that's a lot to take care of. So if you don't have a system for that, that can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, and if you're not already, like your CRM probably has some kind of method or some kind of workflow that you can set up. I know from speaking with a lot of our other students, sometimes that's overwhelming. Like, how do you even do that? So it doesn't have to be like some fancy formalized thing in your CRM, even though that is super helpful and it kind of takes out some of your actions. Yeah, the spreadsheet method works really good. That's kind of more what we do with our inquiry responses. So we haven't set up our workflows in Dubsado yet, but
do as we say, not as we do.
But we do have like a methodology of like responding, kind of the standard email and then the standard follow-up emails that follow. So
hey, real quick, if you're loving this episode and you're an elopement photographer or dreaming of becoming one, you need to know about ElopementCon 2025.
It's a 4-day virtual summit happening May 5th through the 8th, and it's packed with trainings from 23 different elopement photographers, all sharing what's actually working in their businesses right now. We're talking posing, pricing, planning, systems, SEO, Pinterest, inclusivity, mindset, all the things that go into building a business that feels aligned and sustainable. Tickets are just $9, and that gets you 24-hour access to each day's lineup. Or you can upgrade to the 12-month access pass for $47 and rewatch the videos whenever you need them throughout the year. Head to the show notes to grab your ticket, and I'll see you inside ElopementCon.
Yeah. And then the big one is your elopement planning workflow, because there's a lot of pre-work that you need to do leading up to an elopement. And so if you're used to family photography or wedding photography, then this is a big one that really makes it challenging for people, because you have to do a lot of planning and a lot of communication with your couples leading up to their elopement day. And when I was doing weddings, I mean, I basically just sent them a questionnaire 30 days ahead of time and then kind of just did what was on the questionnaire. But like for elopements, you know, we give them a whole onboarding sequence so they know what's coming. We send a questionnaire and then we respond to the questionnaire. A lot of times we need to get permits. We need to secure vendors. So there's a timeline involved with that. We do like 3-month and 1-month check-ins with our couples. We do Zoom calls with our couples. We meet up with them the day before to kind of go over the timeline and make sure they don't have any questions. We oftentimes show up to the locations early and do a dry run. So that's a lot of moving parts. And if you don't have a way to organize that and streamline it, then it's going to feel very overwhelming, especially if you're planning every elopement really from scratch. It's really worth it to just like write down the steps that you're going to take and see what you can automate in Dubsado or Honeybook or whatever, or what emails you can create that you can send out, and try to make it as simple as possible. And again, a spreadsheet or like a Notion board or something like that could be really helpful, or even just like people do all kinds of different things, like a whiteboard in your office to kind of track where everyone is in their elopement planning process can make it a lot less overwhelming. Because when you get successful and start booking all your dream elopements and then you have to plan all of them, it's like, holy crap, you know, it's a lot. And then another important workflow that you can standardize is how you back up your images and deliver sneak peeks. So I always deliver sneak peeks pretty much by 11 a.m. the day after an elopement, and I always back up my files the night of before I go to bed, even if I'm exhausted. I even have a certain way that I position like my SD cards to know whether they've been backed up or not.
And when she says position the SD card, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's like if it's on the left side of her computer, then it hasn't been backed up. And then she like physically moves it once it's been unplugged from the computer and like places it on the right side, or like it's a physical like
movement.
cue.
Yeah. They're just on the table, because sometimes I have like 4 SD cards I need to back up, and it can take a while to back them up. So I don't want to forget which one I've already done and then potentially put in the same one or forget one or something like that. So they're on the table if they haven't been backed up, and then they're sitting on top of my hard drive if they have been backed up. So I never stray from these things because I will forget. Like, I forget things. And I think that's where all this stuff really comes from, is being so nervous that I'm going to miss a whole big part of their elopement because I was chaotic with managing their SD cards or something. So I always do sneak peeks the next day. I know not all photographers do sneak peeks, but our couples pay us a lot of money, and they oftentimes have a lot of family members and friends back home that are like anxiously awaiting, you know, hearing about their elopement. So if they can send the nice photos the next day with an update on the elopement, I think that that's a great thing that we could do for our couples. So I have that workflow down. And then I also have another workflow basically that is involved in the way I deliver sneak peeks, because I have an editor. So by selecting the sneak peeks and editing them, I can then export the gallery and send that gallery to my editors to start working on, basically with anchor images and stuff like that. So the sneak peeks are kind of like twofold, where they're needed for my editor to get started editing, but then also serve the purpose of making our clients happy.
And when I first started my little video business outside of working with Megan, I only had, a couple clients. And so I was like, oh, I can keep track of all of these things because I just have, 3 clients. And then, like Megan said, like as you get more successful and start booking more, I'm envisioning like fall time when you may be shooting like every week or multiple elopements in a given week. It's hard to remember every step of every elopement. So things will get dropped unless you have like this system, again, whether it's a checklist, a spreadsheet, kind of keep track of it. Your brain is great, but like it is fallible, especially when you get busy and stressed and you're traveling and all the things. Something could get missed and we don't want that for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm just thinking back to this one unhappy bride I had back, God, this was probably like 2017. It was one of my first destination elopements in Florida. And I didn't have like a workflow for delivering sneak peeks. So when I ended the elopement, I was like, oh yeah, I'll send you some sneak peeks. But I didn't give like a timeline or anything. And I didn't really have a timeline in my head. And then when I got back to the hotel, I had forgotten my SD card reader that I needed to plug into my computer. And we weren't really near a Best Buy or anything, so I couldn't get one. So then like 3 days later, the bride texts me and is like, hey, am I getting sneak peeks at some point? Like, am I getting photos? And if your couples have to like text you to ask you about stuff, I feel like that means a ball has been dropped. So that bride ended up being upset with me for a lot of different reasons that were out of my control, but I don't think that helped. That I was just like, oh yeah, I don't have an SD reader. I need to get one. I'll be in touch soon or something. There was no workflow and balls got dropped. I ended up giving different client experiences to different couples. So some couples were ecstatic with me. Really, it was just that one bride that was upset with me. And it was a big learning experience for me. So now I do the same thing for every couple. Another thing that I've standardized is packing my gear. And Todd knows this because he used to try to help me with my gear. And again, I'd kind of have a mental breakdown because I have very specific places that I put all my gear. I have a roller bag that everything lives in all the time. Used SD cards go in a certain place. Formatted SD cards go in a different place. Used batteries go in one place. Charged batteries go in a different place. And if my bag isn't zipped, that probably means there's a battery charging somewhere. I only zip my bag if everything is in its correct place and we're ready to go. And I remember Todd trying to like put my cameras and lenses away at some point. Remember?
Yeah, I was just trying to help.
Yeah. And I'm like, don't touch my stuff. So I might take it a little bit to the extreme, but now we have an understanding and we each manage our own gear. Yeah, so packing my gear and traveling with my gear, I'm very particular about. I have certain places that I put things, like in my backpack, that I keep on my person at all times. So I can, if I am feeling forgetful, I can just check that pocket really quickly and know that it's there. And when I am traveling, my computer, my SD cards, and my hard drive are with me at all times. They never leave my person. Even if I'm like running in to grab food at a gas station or something, I bring it with me because I don't want a chance of things getting stolen. So I'm very particular about how I pack all that stuff, where it goes, so that I can make sure that I am protecting it at all costs. But Todd, on the other hand, it kind of makes me nervous because I feel like he always takes all of his gear out and repacks it. And it's like different every time, it seems like.
Well, for you. No, I have a different method, but it's still the same for me every time. Like I have to get batteries charged, FDs. It's all the same type of things. It's just more gear because it's video stuff with lights and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just different. And when someone else tries to help, it is not so helpful because we each have our own way of doing things. Yeah. And so while this podcast is advocating like doing things the same way every time, your business is going to evolve and your procedures will evolve as well. So like as you learn stuff, maybe you get a tip from someone on a podcast or maybe you shoot with one of your friends and they do something a little bit differently. Like obviously these things can adapt and change and like get better as you do it more and more. So don't feel like just because you did it this way, you always have to do it forever and ever, because you'll continue to learn and continue to get better.
Yeah, and you'll learn what works for you. So some of the things that you can look at, because this can be overwhelming to be like, oh, I got to standardize all of this right away, because you might not know the best way for you to do all of these things, but at least starting to think about how you're going to standardize things can help. So the key thing is like pick a task that you repeat a lot and actually write down the steps, because it took me years of trial and error to figure out the way I standardize things. And like I had to learn things the hard way and stuff like that because I wasn't thinking about standardizing things. I was just kind of winging it. And then over time, I was like, oh man, winging it is not really working. So there's got to be a better way. So like you're already ahead of the game by listening to this podcast and realizing how important it is to standardize stuff. So pick a task that you repeat a lot. You know, that's really the first step is like, what is something that you do over and over and over again? And write down the steps that you do them and see if that all makes sense or if you need to change it up a little bit and kind of lock in the best way of doing it and try to consistently do it that way and see if it works for you. Especially if you're traveling for elopements, don't forget all the travel aspects like packing your gear and how you book hotels and stuff like that. I think that traveling is a huge thing you can standardize to help with your mental load. And then really the system that you're going to put in place to make your business easier is just consistency. And then once you do it over and over again the same way, it's just like muscle memory and you won't have to think about it so hard. When you're in the beginning of your business, this might be on the back burner because you're still figuring out, you know, locations and marketing and how to shoot in different lighting scenarios and posing. You know, there's a lot that you're working on, but keeping this in the back of your mind and prioritizing it at some point when you can is going to make everything easier in your business. So that's our episode, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us on this week's episode of Stoked. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. If you're looking for more inspiring elopement photography content, check us out on Instagram at Megan McPhail. And if you'd like to hear more about my business coaching and how I can personally help you hit 6 figures as an elopement photographer, then check out my website at www.meganmcphail.com.